Is ageism at work getting worse, or are we becoming more aware of it? Either way, it has a devastating impact on employees and a significant financial impact on employers. So why do we just seem to accept ageism in the workplace, and what needs to happen to change that? Keep listening to find out. Support for this podcast comes from Smart Recruiters. Are you looking to supercharge your hiring? Meet Winston, Smart Recruiters' AI-powered companion. I've had a demo of Winston. The capabilities are extremely powerful, and it's been crafted to elevate hiring to a whole new level. This AI sidekick goes beyond the usual assistant, handling all the time-consuming admin work so you can focus on connecting with top talent and making better hiring decisions. From screening candidates to scheduling interviews, Winston manages it all with AI precision, keeping the hiring process fast, smart, and effective. Head over to smartrecruiters.com and see how Winston can deliver superhuman results.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, welcome to episode 715 of Recruiting Future with me, Matt Alder. Recruiting Future is a podcast that helps talent acquisition teams drive measurable impact by developing their capability in foresight, influence, talent, and technology. This episode is about talent. While we're seeing a growing awareness of ageism at work, the reality is that it is regularly ignored as an inclusion factor. The impact of this is staggering. The AARP estimates that ageism costs $150 billion in lost GDP annually, and research shows that intergenerational teams consistently outperform age-segregated ones in productivity and innovation. Yet, unlike other forms of discrimination, age bias is openly accepted in hiring via things like age-coded job descriptions and ATS systems that filter by graduation dates. So, what will it take for organisations to recognise that age discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's actively destroying their competitive advantage? My guest this week is Maureen Clough, host of the It Gets Late Early podcast, an advocate against ageism on a mission to expose this universal form of discrimination. In our conversation, she reveals practical strategies for both employers and job seekers to combat age bias while building truly inclusive workplaces that work for everyone. Hi, Maureen, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I'm so glad to be here.
An absolute pleasure to have you on the full show. We had a conversation on the podcast I recorded at HR Tech last year, and I just wanted to have a proper conversation with you and have dedicate the whole show to our conversation rather than just a couple of minutes.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me back. I had a blast on the show floor there at HR Tech, so thanks again.
So for people who are hearing your voice for the first time, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
I'm Maureen Wiley-Clough. I also go by Mo. You may have heard me on my podcast, It Gets Late Early, Ageism in the Workplace, where we really dive into the often completely ignored subject of ageism that is yet rampant across all workplaces and society. You might also have heard me on the Chat and Cheese podcast. I am a co-host. I started in January of this year, and so I'm on there every so often, given my takes on the news of the day, and it's been a blast. But yeah, I really jumped into the whole ageism topic when I was 37 years old at my tech company, and my colleague referred to me as a dino. And I was like, excuse me? And then I looked around and I was like, wait a minute, he's kind of not wrong here. Like, where are all the older people? Because what I recognized was there really weren't people over the age of 40 unless they were in sort of the C-suite, VP, senior director, that sort of realm. And I just thought to myself, how does this work? Because we're all getting older, and do people just like age out of the company? And if so, why is no one talking about this? And I realized that once I started these conversations behind the scenes, everyone was thinking about it and worrying about it. And people like me were kind of like ambitious in some part because we're fearful. It's like the self-preservation. I had this sort of recurrent thought, I better get to senior director by 40 so that I can secure my seat at the table. And it just struck me as absolute lunacy that no one was having this conversation out loud, really, especially in the age of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, and age being the one thing that we all actually share. So it's the universalism, right? So
exactly.
That is what sparked my interest. And so I decided, why not start a podcast? Let's do it.
Absolutely. So first question to you, is ageism getting worse, or am I just noticing it because I'm getting older? That's the kind of the thing. Is it getting worse, or do you think it's always been there?
I think it's absolutely always been there. I think it's one of those isms that until it actually hits you, you're not seeing it coming. Because I'll speak for myself, and I think this actually is accurate for many. I kind of think of aging as something that happens to other people, but not me. Like, I'm still 29 in my mind. But the truth is, I present as not 29 because I'm 42, right? So this aging thing, it's happening to all of us, but we kind of have this cognitive dissonance where we don't really actually accept it for ourselves. And I think that's probably really tied to really our understanding of mortality and how hard it is to come to terms with that. And this is a visual representation of that, right? We've also been inculcated with these messages since essentially birth that getting older is like a thing you don't want to do. And particularly for women, we worship at the fountain of youth. We're told that we should buy anti-aging creams. 10-year-olds are going to Sephora now. Like, it's ridiculous. So it's certainly been driven into us. I will say that So I think it's always been there. I do think that actually, on the flip side, it's probably getting better in the sense that there's a lot more awareness that's building. I feel like this topic is actually coming up increasingly, even in mainstream media and on the silver screen. So midlife characters are not relegated to the sidelines; they're the main characters. So there's this sort of a momentum that is building that's around like, hell no, I'm not done. Don't you dare put me in the corner, right? And don't you marginalize me because I'm over the age of 40. It's not the end. I see that increasingly, and obviously I have confirmation bias. I'm looking for that kind of stuff, right? Given the subject of my podcast and all my content. But I really do believe there's a growing awareness about it. And I also believe that because Gen Z is experiencing a ton of discrimination and bias on the basis of their age and inexperience, that they are awakening to the fact that ageism is a thing, and it's something that's going to come for the younger people as well as the older people. So I think there's sort of this equalizer aspect that's happening right now. So I'm frankly a little bit hopeful about this shifting. I don't think it's ever going away, though. Ageism is just like embedded in our brains, and it's, I believe, tied to the fact that we're mortals.
No, 100%. I completely get what you're saying about it is something that is talked about more, but it is still rampant in the workplace. I know lots of kind of personal examples of people having kind of horrendous experiences because of ageism. What is it in the workplace that causes it, do you think? What is the mindset that kind of goes on that, because experience has always been good. People have always looked for people with experience. What is it where's the disconnect here that's causing this?
It is so wild because experience is something that typically you feel is sought after in the workplace. People say you want those with experience, but then you are presented with experienced candidates, and often it becomes a question of, well, is this person overqualified, right? That's one of those coded words that in some cases can actually indicate ageism, right? And a bias against candidates due to specific age factors. But it is a massive problem in the workplace. And I think it starts with the fact that people don't even know it's wrong, right? Like, ageism is so accepted in our society. There are countless jokes about them. And by the way, I have a great sense of humor. So like a joke here and there is fine. But the reality is that behind those jokes lies this real unconscious, subconscious bias, right? Where people think that older is worse, right? And that younger is better. Again, there is ageism against the young. So we'll touch on that later. But this is really, really entrenched in our stereotypes, and it comes out in all sorts of different ways in the workplace because we bring ourselves to work. So you can have the best policy at your organization, the most ironclad DEIB policy, and you still will find ageism, right? That's in there because we bring ourselves to work. So people don't know it's wrong. People casually, it's the only form of discrimination I think that is like really openly accepted, and it's a shame, because it is a scourge on our society. Ageism causes incredible amounts of personal pain that really radiates beyond the individual and goes out into the community, their family, so on and so forth. And actually, AARP did a research study that quantified the extent to which the government is losing out on GDP. And they estimated that ageism costs $850 billion in lost GDP, just based on just that discrimination in the workplace. So it's real. People are facing it. It's really, again, I think it goes back to those stereotypes that we all have and our fear of aging, right? There's an anxiety around aging.
Yeah. And sort of drilling down on that GDP figure there, what's the impact for employers? What are employers missing? What's the impact on them from ageism driven practices in their recruiting or their HR or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's a lot that they're missing out on. In fact, intergenerational teams are known to be more productive, more innovative, and have better outcomes. And so when you actually employ people across a wide swath of age, you're gaining so much. You're gaining mentorship. You're gaining the ability to see around corners. You're gaining just even life experience that people bring to the table. And they can help inform people who are maybe coming into the game with some really new insights on some of the latest technology. Let's go with AI, right? With some real world examples and institutional knowledge that's so critical, right? And we don't have a lot of organizations out there with an emphasis on mentorship, and that's a huge miss too. Mentorship goes both ways between, the older person and the younger person. I learned a ton from my Gen Z social media coach, right? He teaches me stuff on the daily. He's incredible. So it really does go both ways, but it's something that's in short supply, and Gen Z is being completely left behind. They've come of age professionally in a time where a lot of them, if you're doing white collar work, you may have either a hybrid workplace or a fully remote workplace. And so all of the customs and work norms and professionalism that I learned, for example, as a millennial, being shoulder to shoulder in the workplace with my peers, they've missed out on that. And yet we're maligning them for, quote, not being professional and so on and so forth. It's really deeply unfair. So it's even those little customs and workplace norms that are not being passed down, and that is a loss as well. So companies and not to mention, companies are saying that there's a talent shortage and they can't find anyone. Well, if you're proactively either pushing people out, leveraging some sort of ATS tool, and pushing people out based on a certain age that they are, right? Like that's a problem, right? You're not looking at the full scope of candidates, and you're missing out on the opportunity to bring about people with a ton to offer organizations. So it's really just, it's such a miss.
And what are some of the worst examples you've seen?
I had a woman come on my show, and she finally was able to speak. So first of all, I want to point out, age discrimination is one of the hardest types of discrimination cases to prove. The standard of proof, the burden of proof is higher than that of other forms of discrimination. And that is due to a Supreme Court ruling back in 2009. So you have to have age be the, quote, but-for cause of your discrimination claim, meaning that you can't have a mixed motive. It can't be, throw everything in the kitchen sink at the wall there and get an age discrimination claim passed. It has to be the sole reason, which is so infuriating because it should be lessened to the burden of proof of other forms of discrimination, if you ask me. Anyhow, so age discrimination, super, super tough to prove. I'm totally I'm like, maybe this is perimenopause, speaking of age. I'm totally forgetting my train of thought and the question that you just asked me. So please.
Examples of ageism.
Oh, yes, I got you. Actually, hilarious. Okay, so I had a woman who came on, all of the reason I brought up the age discrimination being tough to actually get ruled in your favor is that there's a chilling effect on people. People are afraid to speak out. It can harm people's career. And so, unfortunately, sometimes there are people who are unwilling to go on the record and speak about what has happened to them in terms of the discrimination they've faced. And in one such case, a woman finally was able to come forward publicly and speak about this because she was able to actually get the exit and receive all the money that she had earned over the course of her time at this company. And once she got that, she was like, all right, I'm ready to go. And this woman, her name's Amelia DeAnzica, she came on my show. When she was 42 years old, she was brought into a room after multiple quarters of outperforming her goals, actually having been given promotions, having been given additional equity. I mean, what company does that? No one just gives you extra money. That's outrageous, right? So she was just absolutely killing it. She was brought into a room. Her superior had flown someone in from another country, and this person said to her, we just need some fresh blood in your seat. And they ousted her right then and there. There was no other reason other than fresh, by the way, is coded language for young, if you don't know. So coded language abounds, hungry, energetic, all of that, digital native, ninja, all of that. That's coded language, right? And so she was ousted, and she was like, that was 100% age discrimination. And she went to every lawyer, all the best lawyers in the Silicon Valley area, and to a person, they told her, honey, if you ever want to work again, you better not do a single thing with this, because your name will be mud in this town. And so she had to be silent and suffer the indignation and the humiliation of having to walk out of a company that she helped build brick by brick so that she could be replaced by someone like 15 years younger than she was. That was the only reason, was her age. So that was egregious. And, it's just heartbreaking, because these things, they happen all the time, again, because people don't even think it's wrong. People just casually throw about, oh, you're old, or he's not going to be able to learn new things because he's older. Or, oh, this person won't be able to pick up this role because it involves AI. There's a huge bias against older candidates because of the concept that they won't be able to pick up AI. It's wrong. It's 100% wrong. They can, they will, and they do. And yeah, there's a lot in the mix there, but yeah, there are horrible forms of ageism, really egregious cases like the one I just described, and things that you wouldn't even necessarily see unless you were actually looking for it and proactive about trying to suss it out. For example, there was a case. It was in 2024, I believe. And the EEOC nailed iTutor Group because iTutor Group had actually systematically been rejecting candidates who were applying to roles at the company at age 55 if they were women and age 60 if they were men. So they were filtering them out immediately. So you don't even know that you're not getting this fair shake. And as I'm sure your listeners all understand too, Workday has just been targeted with a class action lawsuit on the basis of age discrimination in its AI hired AI or hired score AI, I think it is, tool, which ranked candidates. And so the Workday does not agree. Workday denies all of those allegations. So it remains to be seen what will happen with that case. But there have been precedents like that iTutor Group and one other with Amazon. But it's going to be fascinating to see what happens there. But I will say, all sorts of ATS systems out there routinely request the graduation date of applicants. And in some cases, it's hard coded, so you can't actually answer a date earlier than, say, 1990, right? So they filter out people automatically in that regard. And when I've flagged that, my listeners will reach out and say, hey, Maureen, I saw this. And when I've gone and tested it myself, sometimes I'll go to the company, and to a company, they all say, oh, that's a coding error, or oh, that was for an internship, to which I say, anybody of any age should be able to be an intern, but let's leave that there. But it's something that basically what I have to say on that is, I'm sorry, it's not all a mistake. These are deliberate these are deliberate actions by companies. And at the federal level, you are able to ask for age identification markers, but at some state and local levels, that is illegal behavior. So it's kind of a mess, Matt. It's a real bummer, because this is one thing we all share. We're all getting older.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your advice to employers? What can employers do? How should they think? What should they watch out for?
Employers need to start with actually caring about age as an inclusion factor. PwC did a study, and 92% of employers miss age as one of those subject matters, right? It's not on the agenda at all. And there are ways to pull it in that don't have to be so massive. It can really start with something as easy as going through your job descriptions and making sure that you don't have this coded language that basically, will filter out older candidates, right? Not having qualifications where you're asking for people from 6 to 8 years of experience or something like that, right? Like how about using 6+, right? That works. And so there are things like that you can do. And then you can also have conversation within ERGs around, age or stage of life. And so creating safe spaces for employees to go and have the conversations about the subjects that are really important to them in those moments of their lives, and it provide areas of connection. There's also the possibility of creating intergenerational mentorship opportunity, which companies really should be doing anyway, because right now, a crazy number of people in Gen Z said they hadn't spoken to a person over the age of 50 in their organization in over a year. It was a LinkedIn study that came out. And it's like, guys, think of all that is lost by not having the ability to collaborate with people across your organization, putting people who are less experienced with people who've been there, done that. That's like a treasure trove of value if you can unlock right there. It's in front of your face, and you're just not doing it. And again, I think a lot of this has to do with just not having enough connection, right? And so if you can connect people of different generations and demystify what it's like being older or being younger and allow people to make these relationships happen, I think there's going to be a lot more mutual respect and a far less kind of othering, which happens. There's just an insane amount of intergenerational warfare right now, and it's really hurting everybody. It's like, come on, guys, let's do better.
So I want to come back and talk about Gen Z in a second, but for now, let's focus on, I suppose, Gen X, older millennials, people at that older end of the scale who are kind of very much in the firing line for some of this at the moment. What would your advice be to someone who is, looking for a job? How should they present their experience? How can they deal with all of this that's going on in a kind of proactive way?
I think first and foremost, what you have to do is accept that you probably will face some ageism, but basically set your mind to controlling what you can control and changing the way you approach your search, right? So instead of seeing your age as a liability, see it as the asset it is. Because the reality is, if you've been doing work for a long time, you have a crazy network. If you've just been doing life for a long time, you have a crazy network. And that's a boon to you in your job search that, frankly, I feel bad for Gen Z that they don't have. We'll get back to that later. But if you can draw strength from all of the accomplishments you've had over the course of time and draw excitement by the fact that you can actually tap into this massive network of yours that includes and extends to people like past colleagues, past bosses, past partners, past vendors. And all down to, who at your kids' little league, right? Literally, a friend of mine was working on finding a job for over a year. And how did he find his job? Through a connection of his son's little league coaches, right? Like it's really seriously, that is a network too. And we forget about that. But I think truly it's rewiring your brain to see your age as an asset and to recognize that you've gone through some things, some things, you've done some things that are pretty cool, and really just go forward with that confidence. And that, I think, is the single most important thing you can do. I think you also have to recognize this is a thing. People will judge you based on your age. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's real. And so know you're going to face it. And if you need a job right away because you need to pay the bills or whatever, I hate to say it, but you should probably take some early experience, maybe your college graduation, high school graduation, off your resume. I really don't like that I have to say that, but it is just plain good advice if you need something quickly. If on the flip side, you have the privilege of being a little choosier, put it all on there. You want to work for a company who wants you for you and who is not going to have these sorts of biases against you for having breathed longer than other people. That's so absurd. So it really depends on your personal circumstance, what I advise there. But, I'd love to be in a world where you can just go full tilt and say, like, here I am with 45 years of experience or whatever it is. But we're not there. And frankly, I don't know that ageism ever is going to go away. So know about it. Know that you will experience it, but don't give up before you start. I've heard so many people say, oh my gosh, no one wants to hire a 55-year-old. I'm like, okay, well, with that attitude, you're not going to get anywhere. That's the reality. And so just do what you can to help yourself out and really just draw strength from all that you've done in the past and really put together what I call a win wallet is, go through all of your past accomplishments professionally, take some of your favorite compliments, right? Put them in a place that's accessible. Draw strength from that. When you are going and you are on the interview circuit, you need to have these sort of stories at the ready. And we all have bad days. Sometimes you just want to go to the win wallet and check out something nice that someone said about you. And that can give you a little boost, right? So it really comes down to stuff like that. Just be confident. Help yourself out. Do what you can.
I think one of the other things is that, kind of ageism aside, the world of work has changed and how you find a job has changed. AI is continuing to kind of drive that change. So I'm seeing a lot of people who are kind of, being laid off maybe for the first time in their career, and they're kind of struggling to get their head around how things have kind of shifted since they last looked for a job and how things are shifting in the future. What advice would you give people in terms of sort of, pivoting their thinking, looking for jobs in different industries or different areas, which obviously is a very hard thing to do. How can people think differently in a way that's going to be sort of beneficial to them?
Leading with curiosity is the best advice that I can give anyone when it comes to this. It's just full stop, very hard. If you haven't been interviewing for a long time, if you've been in a role for a long time and you're facing a job loss for the first time, that's just a really tough, gutting moment for sure. So give yourself a moment to absorb that and know you're not alone, because lots of people are there. But from that point forward, I really think that you need to, especially if you're engaging the thought of moving into a different industry and doing a career pivot of any sort, going into it with a curious mindset, trying to find people who are doing the thing that you would like to do or in the arena where you would like to build your next steps, and asking all sorts of questions. So doing those informational meetings, those coffee meetings, trying to figure out as much as you can. Gosh, there's so many opportunities for people to learn online. I mean, it's democratized access to so much knowledge. You can go on YouTube and learn just about anything these days. And so get really curious, get really open, and get proactive. And there will be days where you're going to be miserable and it's going to feel like climbing Mount Everest, and like know that that's coming too. But just get out there as much as you can. And, hopefully you've seen this coming at some level and you've started the networking process. It's always easier to network before you really need something, and so keeping that mindset of like always keeping in touch and keeping connected with people as much as possible is really important. But if you're already there, give yourself a moment, absorb it, but then just get really curious, start learning. Definitely go and check out AI. I know there is a lot of reluctance on behalf of quite some people of all ages to get engaged with AI. I know it took me a minute, I'll be honest, and I probably still should be using it a heck of a lot more than I am. But especially when we have understanding that there is this stereotype against older people, that they can't adapt to change, that they don't want to learn new things, that they don't know how to deal with tech, right? Like a lot of people think that AI is not something older people do. And so if you are older, do not give people more reason to embed that stereotype in their brains. Do not play into that. Do the opposite, please, for the sake of all of us. Go and learn AI. And you don't have to be a master of it. Just go and get a little bit familiar with it and just know enough to be dangerous. I would also say what employers around any industry want to see, I would imagine more than anything else, is the mindset of curiosity and continuous learning. So it's not enough to just merely go do these things on your own in the shadows. You need to have the ability to place these things on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile. So I advise that people go and they take courses, they take certifications, and they post them on their LinkedIn profile or on their resume. That demonstrates continuous learning and a desire for change, and it helps disavow people of those absurd stereotypes, and it's just going to help you in the interview process overcome any objections about your inability to change or your lack of desire to move up, because there's also a lot of bias against older candidates for the concept that they won't be ambitious, or they don't want to stay on at the organization for too long, or maybe they're just going to be stuck in their ways and aren't going to adapt with the times. So give them like demonstrable evidence that that's not you, right?
And sort of sticking with that AI theme, one of the things that I think lots of people are now noticing about AI is it's either taking away or has the potential to take away the kind of tasks that sit in entry-level jobs, which means that we've already spoken about Gen Z. not necessarily having access to the office to learn some of the skills that have been traditionally associated with the world of work. But, in fact, difficult getting started at all because AI is potentially replacing them before they've even hit the workforce. How do we need to think about that? What do employers need to think about when it comes to Gen Z and this next generation entering the workforce?
Well, first of all, I just want to say my heart breaks for Gen Z with all of this because it's just, talk about a tough job market to be entering and a tough timeline to be starting some of your first professional experiences. So I want to say that. I really think that what is going to change here is sort of, I guess a lot. I wish I had a crystal ball here, I guess I should say. It's really tough to ascertain how employers are going to think about early experience now and what Gen Z is going to have to demonstrate in order to get those jobs, because a lot of these jobs, as you said, they're being outsourced or completely replaced by AI. And so a lot of the experience level that they request is like 5+ years. So what do you do if you're early, right? I think Gen Z's best shot at demonstrating excellence and acumen is to, sadly, again, let's go back to AI, is to demonstrate their aptitude with AI tools and show what they can do, show their curiosity, complete projects, and show that they are continuously learning and excited about how they can grow their careers to sort of hopefully replace some of that required 5 years of experience that they won't have. And I hate that I'm saying that, by the way, because it sounds like a lot of that would be unpaid labor. And I really dislike that as a concept. But I think, anything Gen Z can do to show their drive for excellence and any sort of projects that they've completed, which can then be equated to experience because it is experience, is helpful. So I guess I'm looking at it from the flip side of, what can Gen Z do to help themselves versus what can employers do to think about this? I don't know where employers are going to go with this. It's just, I think it's so uncharted. And you even think of the fact that employers are now mandating AI usage and yet not giving anybody a guidebook or a roadmap on how to do it. They're like, hey, everybody use AI. Show us how you're doing it, by the way, because we want to know best practices because what's happening, right? So it's kind of like, it's just the Wild West. So truly, I'm not sure what I would advise to employers on the Gen Z problem, other than to say, we know that intergenerational teams complete better, productivity, do more innovation. We know that you'll actually make more money if you employ people across the spectrum of ages, and that will mirror the customers that you have and the future customers that you have. So it's just dang good business practice to employ younger people as well. They're so strong. I love Gen Z. I think they're fantastic, and I love boomers too. So let's stop disrespecting people on the basis of when they started breathing and how many birthday candles they have. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Gen Alpha, but I think that Gen Alpha are actually, I think they're actually writing the AI at the moment. I think they're going to rule the world.
Exactly. Who knows what's going to, oh man, wild times, sci-fi dystopia. Yeah, bizarre.
Maureen, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
My thanks to Maureen. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track on everything that's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.
This is my show.